Well, hello. This is Chris White here on a Monday evening, and here in mid-March, and we're here to talk about the potential for severe weather, given that severe weather season is almost upon us here in Virginia. Just to give you a little bit of background, I'm a storm chaser. Among other things I do with weather, I'm a storm chaser and have chased storms both here in Virginia and out on the Great Plains since 2002. So I've seen a few things, and especially if we realized how much severe weather actually occurs here in Virginia. Most people don't realize it, but there's a lot that goes on. And with severe weather season approaching, it's time to do some awareness and to raise awareness of what may be on the horizon. There's nothing really close at the moment, so rest assured there won't be anything much this week. But with severe weather season approaching, with the other health scares and concerns that are going on right now, there's a number of things that have been canceled. People are at home; they're away from their normal places of work and school. And things are being canceled, like, for instance, the tornado drill, the statewide tornado drill that was scheduled for tomorrow morning, Tuesday, March 17th, has been indefinitely postponed. So there's really not a lot going on to talk about severe weather. But, Mother Nature's not going to wait for us. She's going to provide some activity, whether we're ready for it or not. So that's why I'm here to talk about severe weather. So this is your unpolished attempt to raise awareness about severe weather. Specifically tonight, we'll talk about tornadoes, but there's other types, and I'll mention those. And then maybe provide some safety tips of what you can do if severe weather challenges the area. So what I'm going to do is I've got a presentation with some pictures, and I have a couple of video clips, and we'll run through those. So let me do a screen share here, and we will go to this. Here we go. So this is the, I get the right screen up here. This is a scene, the opening scene here. I'll talk a little bit more about this storm, but we'll talk about Virginia tornadoes. When most people here, at least, think about tornadoes, we probably have a picture of, a nice flat terrain, no trees, somewhere out west on the Great Plains with a beautiful elephant trunk or a cone tornado that's visible, highly visible for miles away. That normally doesn't happen here in Virginia. Tornadoes are hard to see. As in this picture here, there's a tornado under the storm there, but you can't see it touching the ground because there's a tree line in the way, and there's some topography involved as well. So the difficulty is, and especially here in Virginia, a lot of the tornadoes are rain wrapped, meaning they're in the rain that's underneath the storm. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to see. So, for people that expect to look out the window and see a tornado when they hear a warning, that's not necessarily the case. Well, let's move on a little bit here. And I will, mention that there are other severe weather hazards, obviously, that we need to be aware of. Tornadoes are just one of them. Large hail, of course, can do some damage. I've had experience with that. Lightning, of course, with any thunderstorm, doesn't have to be a severe thunderstorm, but any thunderstorm produces lightning, which can be dangerous. Wind, straight line wind, not associated with tornadoes, can be a big problem at times. Those that remember the derecho of 2012, that was a widespread wind event. And of course, flooding is a big problem for lots of areas, especially with areas along streams and rivers and when they overflow their banks. But we'll focus on tornadoes here in Virginia for tonight. Now, I'll have to confess, I don't remember where I got this graphic. I did not create it, and I could not find out who to attribute it to. So whoever made it, thank you. Attribution will come later. But these are, since 1974, these are the major tornado outbreaks here in Virginia. You can see all the different color codes. Starts in 1974 because that was thought to be the generational tornado outbreak of the 20th century. And there were hundreds and hundreds of tornadoes. You can see the red streaks here in the western part of the state that were representative of those tornadoes. Then you fast forward to 1993, there's tornadoes in the southeastern part of the state. This was some tornadoes especially to wreak havoc in Petersburg. And then there are three in a row from Gaston, Francis, and Ivan from tropical outbreaks or tropical remnants that came through. I'll be talking a little bit more about the Ivan outbreak, and you can see the green coloring. There was a bunch of tornadoes. It was a major tornado outbreak from there. And then you got April 28th of 2008 also provided some. And then there were two outbreaks in 2011, one on April 16th, and then a really huge one on the 10 to 11 days after that. And then, of course, just 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, the remnants of Florence came through there in the dark blue and provided a lot of damage in and around the Richmond area. So there have been a number of not just single, but multiple tornado outbreaks here in Virginia. Just as a kind of to gauge your brain on the number and types of tornadoes we have, here's a map from 1985 to 2014, so roughly a 30-year period, the average annual numbers of tornadoes by state. You can see from the darker shadings here, the Tornado Alley in the middle of the country has the most of them. But if you go over here to Virginia, we average about 16 tornadoes per year per state. So there are enough around to make life interesting, to pay attention. We can break those numbers down a little bit more if we go to this map. And this is the number of tornado warning days with at least one event per National Weather Service office. Now, you'll notice here in Virginia, there are three numbers essentially, because there's three National Weather Service offices that cover probably 95% of the state. But there are a number of tornado warning days that occur. And this was, by the way, I should mention, this was for last year. This is for 2019, from January 1st through November 1st. So you can see there were a number of warnings that were issued there. We can break that down even further into counties. This is the count for 2019 for tornado warnings by county, and you can see they're color-coded, and there's also numbers there. There's a maximum over here in the eastern part of Virginia, kind of toward the coastal plain. But then over here in Pennsylvania County and South Side, up pretty much what's the Route 29 corridor, there's another maximum. So there are some areas that do see tornadoes on a fairly regular basis. Not like you would see out in Kansas or Oklahoma, certainly, but enough so we need to pay attention to what's going on. So with that in mind, let's talk about what's a tornado and what's a funnel. Here are the definitions out of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration glossary. A funnel cloud, as you can see there, is just a rotating cloud column that stretches down from the cloud base. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But there's no circulation underneath it. The cloud column is obviously rotating, but if you looked down below at the ground below that column, you won't see anything stirring around or any dust going on. A tornado is that same funnel cloud, but the circulation reaches the ground. Now, the caveat is the part A and part B underneath. Most of us think about a tornado as a funnel going all the way from cloud base down to the ground, and you can see it. The funnel is there, it's visible. That's not always the case. A lot of times the visible condensation funnel is above the ground and there's nothing on the ground, but you can see dust or dirt swirling around underneath it. That's a tornado, even if you can't see the condensation funnel all the way to the ground. Now, most of the tornadoes that get produced, especially the stronger tornadoes, come out of something called the supercell thunderstorm. And this is just a thunderstorm that, because of its structure and the way it builds, it can last a long time. It's kind of, some of these can be cyclic. In other words, they can build, strengthen, drop a tornado, weaken, build, strengthen, drop another tornado. And so it's almost like the tornado hops along, along the path and just skips along. But it's actually the same storm dropping multiple tornadoes. This is a side view of a supercell up here on the top left. And you can see the updraft, you can see the rain over here on the right, and then you see a rain-free base off. This is usually on the southwest side of the storm. Underneath that rain-free base, here's a lowering, which is called a wall cloud. And that wall cloud can be rotating or non-rotating. A tornado, if it forms, would typically drop out of a rotating wall cloud and make contact with the ground. Now on the bottom right, here is a picture that I took several years ago. This is looking west. You can actually see the Blue Ridge Mountains there at the bottom. This is a supercell thunderstorm. There's the updraft, the rain over here in the dark area, a rain-free base, and there's the wall cloud lowering underneath that rain-free base. But this storm didn't have a tornado. But that gives you an idea of what the structure of things are. And this, again, was the southwest side of the storm, which tends to be the business end of the storm. Now, with those definitions and pieces of information, let's look at some specific tornadoes. This is that picture I showed up front. This was actually from the remnants of Hurricane Ivan that came through in 2004. Those of you in Virginia that lived here in September that year. Remember, those remnants came through and fostered dozens of tornadoes. This happened to be a tornado that we intercepted in Fauquier County, northwest of the city of Fredericksburg. And this is looking west at the tornado. You can see the cloud base here. This is the rain-free base. This was obviously rotating. Here's the wall cloud underneath it. And then underneath, actually behind the tree line down over here, was a tornado. We couldn't see it. But because of the motion of the cloud and what we were seeing, we were pretty certain there was a tornado there. So I called in a tornado report to the National Weather Service. Turns out this particular storm and that wall cloud and a tornado under it produced an F3 strength tornado that did some damage in the town of Remington. So again, if you're thinking about looking out the window and seeing a tornado miles and miles away like you would out west, it doesn't happen here in Virginia. This is one of the clearest views I've ever had, and I still couldn't see the whole thing. Well, here's another one. It's a little bit more murky, if you will. This was from May of 2006 in Spotsylvania County. This picture was actually taken, those of you familiar with that area, it's taken from the Todd's Tavern area, looking kind of northwest. This was a storm. It was a tornado-warned storm that moved north, crossed Interstate 64, and moved into western Spotsylvania County, which is not a place to go chasing, frankly. There's not a lot of roads. There's plenty of trees to block your views. And so we were kind of paralleling this storm, and we lost sight of it, kind of lost situational awareness, like where we were with respect to it. So when we came out to this open area, this open field, we thought the storm had already passed by. So we got out, my son and I were chasing together. We got out of the car and looked around, and all of a sudden this tornado appeared on the other side of those trees you see in the foreground there. Those trees, to give you an idea, were about 100 yards from our position, and tornado wasn't much beyond that. And you can see the picture itself is rather blurry because there's rain coming down, it's wrapped a tornado. And it's also blurry because I was actually running back to dive into the car to get out of the way of this thing while I was taking these pictures. But this wound up being an EF0. It wasn't really that strong, snapped a few trees off in a battlefield area there. But this is more typical of the kind of tornado scene that you would see here in Virginia. Not very clear, not crisp, but it just popped out of the trees. Let's fast forward now to 2011. I mentioned that huge tornado outbreak at the end of April. This was actually the second storm that I chased that day. Both had funnels underneath it. This was, again, in Spotsylvania County. This is west of the city of Fredericksburg. Literally, I was stopped on a median on Route 3 in the Chancellorsville area, those of you familiar with that area. And looking north at this storm, watch this storm cross from left to right in front of me. And this feature here was obviously a funnel, obviously rotating, but we couldn't see. I was chasing alone. I couldn't see the ground underneath it to know whether or not, hey, there's there a ground circulation? Is this a tornado or just a funnel? I called it into the National Weather Service and let them make the call, but it could have very easily have been a tornado because that's a pretty strong looking funnel and it's not very far off the ground. But at this point, it was probably, my estimation, probably 3 or 4 miles north of me as it was moving away. So just another look at a Virginia tornado, or possible tornado, I should say. So I've seen many other ones too that could be possible tornadoes or funnels, but that's the kind of judgment call you have to make as to whether it's going to be touching the ground or not. Either way, it's something to pay attention to, especially if there's a tornado warning on a storm. Now we'll jump forward again a few years to the end of September in 2016. This is in Franklin County, Virginia, south of the Smith Mountain Lake area, those of you familiar with that area. This was underneath the funnel, you can see here right kind of in the left center of the picture, that dropped down underneath the supercell thunderstorm that I had tracked northward from the North Carolina border. It was cyclic. It would strengthen, drop a funnel, and maybe a tornado. I don't know. I couldn't see a ground circulation, and it would weaken and it would strengthen again and weaken. And this is what it looked like. This was the most defined funnel that I had, at a view of a funnel I had at that point. So you can see that Virginia tornadoes aren't always that clear. Let me jump ahead to this slide, and I will go to some video clips, and we'll see if we can take a look at what that looks like. So let me go here and do a share screen again. and we'll pick this one. All right, this funnel, this was actually a funnel and then a tornado in Palmyra, Virginia. This is southeast of southeast of Charlottesville. And this was in 2008. And I'll just let this run. And now we move north of town. Now, this tornado on the ground is redundant. I know, chasers know that, and we tend to say it anyway. This was another symptomatic problem. You can see how murky it was. This was almost dark. It was so dark that my digital camera wasn't taking good pictures. So this was really just a little handheld video I had. But this was a tornado that had dropped into that area, again, southeast of the southeast of the Charlottesville area. Let me pick another one here that we can look at. Let's see, what do we want to look at this time? How about this one? Let me see. That's not, here we go. This is the one I'm looking for. This is from that same end of September storm, but it's a little further north now, and it's re-strengthened. And this is looking north from Union Hall, and is sped up a couple times, again, almost to dark, but you can see the funnels. Actually, it's kind of a multi-vortex funnel spinning around there. This is about, my guess was a mile and a half north of me. The storm was moving away from me, so I didn't have to get out of the way. I positioned myself just right. It was moving actually probably over Smith Mountain Lake at this point. The interesting thing was this particular storm did not have a tornado warning. It was severe thunderstorm warning was on it, which is something to pay attention to because any severe thunderstorm can produce a tornado. You have to be careful of that. But you can see the funnel swirling around under there. Did that touch the ground and was that a tornado? Could very well have been. I don't know. I called in a report to the National Weather Service, but it was looking very, very good there. I had to let the storm go at this point because it got dark and my northward road options were kind of limited at this point. Let's see, what else can we look at here? Got one more that I think I could show you to give you an idea of what funnels and tornadoes look like here in Virginia. And let's see, let's go to this one. Let me close that out. Here we go. Now this is from August of 2018. This was on a day when there was no severe weather expected. There was nothing forecast. I just happened to be out because I knew storms were going to fire. I wanted to go check them out. This is, again, in the Union Hall area, just south of Smith Mountain Lake. I'm looking west, and you can see the storm there. There's a rain-free base. There's rain on either side of this with light shining underneath it, and there's some dangly stuff there. So I watched this and watched it spin, and this particular, I think, video is sped up either 4 or 8 times. I lost track. But just keep an eye on it. And you can see there's scud rising from the ground. It's probably 8 times, given the speed of the vehicle. But it swirled around, and you can watch the whole base of that part of the cloud swirl around. It's building another section of the wall cloud, dropping a multi-vortex funnel. Not very clear, but it was definitely a funnel. It surprised me. I mean, I actually had to come back and look at the video. Say, did I think I see what I thought I did? Was that really a funnel? So those are some of the visual images, if you will, of tornadoes and funnels here in Virginia. They can all cause damage. All those tornadoes can cause damage if they're in the right place at the right time, but you might not be looking for them, and that's the key. So let me go back to here, and we'll talk about some other aspects of tornadoes in watches and warnings. For instance, let's just go with this, watches and warnings. Hopefully most people know the difference between them. These happen to do with a severe thunderstorm watch and warning. A watch just means be prepared. There's no severe weather yet, but it's possible. The ingredients are there. And I've borrowed this from another meteorologist. It's like baking a cake. When a watch is issued, all the ingredients are there. They're laid out on the counter, ready to go. The flour, the sugar, the yeast, and everything, and the icing, everything's ready to go. It's just not made yet. When you get to the warning stage, that's when severe weather has been spotted, either by a spotter, a chaser, or on radar, which typically is a main way of seeing severe weather. And that's kind of like when the cake comes out of the oven. It's there. So severe weather is imminent when a warning is issued. So it's time to take action, time to take shelter. And so that's the difference between a watch and a warning. Remember, the watch is the ingredients are ready. The warning is the ingredients, the cake is baked. Okay, if we put it that way. Now, to receive warnings and so that we can take shelter and know what to do and where to go, here's a suggestion for 6 ways to receive a warning. One of which I highly recommend is a NOAA weather radio. I've got one, in fact, a new one I just bought here recently that's sitting in the next room over, and it has the ability. It's all pre-programmed. I set it up when I got it to only give me warnings here in my local area, but it's set to give an audible alarm if a tornado warning or some other threatening weather that I have it ready to receive comes into the area. Very handy at night. And this is one of the things that actually saved some lives in the Nashville, Tennessee tornadoes a couple weeks ago, because if you remember, those tornadoes came through in the middle of the night. And so a NOAA weather radio is valuable, despite the fact that it's something extra. It's not high tech. It's not a cell phone. It's not any of those things, but it works and it saved lives. Obviously, local TV and radio, if you happen to have those around and those are on, those are great, especially if you're awake, not in the middle of the night. Also, wireless emergency alerts. Every smartphone has the opportunity or has the ability to receive wireless emergency alerts. Go into your menu, into your settings, and turn them on. I know a lot of people tend to turn them off, but turn them on. They can save your life. Those tornado warnings and things like flash flood warnings can come through. I wouldn't depend on any outdoor sirens. First of all, there's not that many here in Virginia. Secondly, there's a reason they're called outdoor sirens. They're outdoors. They're designed to warn people that are already outside. Hey, something's happening, like you're working on a construction site or out in the field on a farm or something, or out on a ball field. They're not going to wake you up if you're lying inside a well-insulated home in the middle of the night. You might not even hear them. So don't depend on outdoor sirens, first of all, because they're for outdoors. Secondly, because there's not that many here in Virginia. Obviously, there's internet sites. This weather.gov is a great site to go to for your local forecasts and warnings. And then, of course, you can also get texts and messages and phone calls from friends and family and coworkers about things going on. But the idea is to have more than one way to get a warning. Don't rely on one way. Don't rely on just your cell phone or just the television. You need to have more than one way in case things happen. In the Tennessee tornadoes, power went out and the cell network was damaged. So a lot of the cell phones weren't receiving signals. So what would be the best way to get a warning at that point? Probably a NOAA weather radio. I can tell you that you can find them. They're relatively cheap, $20 to $30, depending on the model you get and their battery backup. So if power goes out, you still have a way to get a warning. Now, some sheltering guidelines. If a tornado warning is issued for your area and you hear the tornado warning, for instance, if you're driving along in a vehicle and you hear a tornado warning come through on the radio or on your cell phone, don't keep driving. I've seen this more than once. I've been in a tornado warned storm and people just keep driving, like they drive right into it. Stop driving. Get off the road. Do something to take shelter. The warning's been issued for a reason. And a lot of times the warning only has a few minutes lead time before the actual event arrives. So some sheltering guidelines. The worst options are on the left, the best options on the right. Just to let you know, mobile homes are just never good for any kind of tornado or even a high wind event. Find another shelter. Use the lead time if you can possibly to find a sturdy house to get to. Vehicles are not a good place to be. If you can get out of your vehicle and get in a ditch, that's even better. Don't shelter underneath the highway overpass. I think we've all seen you probably heard videos or heard stories or seen videos of people doing that. That's not a good place to be in a tornado. Bad options, schools like large open rooms like gymnasiums. Bad idea. Get in a hallway, get in a smaller room, a bathroom, something that doesn't have that big overarching roof that can be ripped off and things falling on you. Manufactured housing the same way. It's just they're not as sturdy as stick-built houses. Better options. If you have you're in your home itself, go to the lowest floor. If you have a basement, of course that helps. But go to the lowest floor. Go to an interior closet put as many walls between you and any window as possible. Don't get near a window, or if you have a basement, that would be even better. And the best options, of course, if there are storm shelters around. There's not as many in this part of the country, but if you can find a good storm shelter or a safe room, that would be even better. And the idea here would be to have that weather radio or wireless emergency alert source with you. Stay in that shelter until you hear the all clear given. So that's pretty much it for this unpolished presentation, if you will. There's more information if you want to find out more. Here's one link, just ready.gov/tornadoes. There's all sorts of information there, bunch of stuff that I haven't covered. But I hope you understand that here in Virginia, first of all, we do have tornadoes and other severe weather. The severe events or the things like funnels and tornadoes aren't always as visible as people think they should be, especially if you're familiar with storms out on the Great Plains. And so, when you hear a watch, you start paying attention. When you hear a warning, take shelter and have a plan in place before that happens to do that. So hope that clears up a few things. Maybe we'll get a severe weather awareness program going here after some of this other stuff settles down. But remember, Mother Nature's not going to wait for that. So pay attention to anything that might happen. Have a good evening.